Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we need to agree with that. Good thought, Margaret. Thank you.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah, so where was I? So that's the setup. That would be either indoors or outdoors, pretty well similar setup. I mean, if I do it in a cathedral, which is very large and everything, I put a gazebo up in a cathedral because I feel a bit more
Yeah,
cozy doing it.
yes.
It feels a bit more like a space, a dedicated space. So my chums at the front would have given out leaflets and gathered people, and somebody would come to me sitting at the table, or one of my other people who are going to do it. And I start off by saying, do you know about the Jesus deck, which most people don't? And I just have a little tagline, which I always use, which is, it's the story of Jesus, and I use my hands. It's the story of Jesus and where his story meets your story. It's not the tarot, it's not fortune telling, it's not future telling. It's just the story of Jesus and where it touches your life story. And that seems to work quite well as a way in. And then I just explain to people that I'm going to deal out 5 cards, and they can take as long as they like to have a look. Now, you asked about numbers of cards. I know I'm dotting about on there.
Right.
I use 5 cards. Steve Hollinghurst only gives them 1 because he's mean and stingy and a friend. So there are some people who use a whole 9 on an arcana, like as if it was tarot, and a cloth and everything. And I think that's a bit too complicated. And the reason I use 5 is because one time I was out doing it, and a young couple in their very early 20s came in up, and they said, we don't know anything about the story of Jesus. We must have done it at school, but we've forgotten. And I said, that doesn't matter. I said, you don't need to know anything about it. It's, the cards are there. And I dealt out 5 cards. I dealt out a card about Jesus's birth. I dealt out a card about his ministry. I dealt about a card about his teaching. I dealt a card about his death, and a card about his resurrection. And I thought, well, if they don't know anything, in a few minutes they'll have had a little bit of a taster of the whole of the life of Christ. So that's why I still use 5, because 5 seems to me to be a good number. But some people do 3, 2. I say 9 is too many. 9 is too many.
Yeah.
So I deal out the cards, and I say to people, and of course I deal them so that they can see them, and they're upside down to me. So I've had to learn to do them upside down. I'm dealing them now, but it's only because it's habit. And as I'm dealing them, this answers one of your questions. I'll say the cards have got a picture, part of the story of Jesus on it, some words from the Bible, and down the side, the name of the person who wrote the story about Jesus. Matthew, it happens I've got Matthew here, Mark, and I pause after I've said Luke, and I watch their mouth, and if their mouth goes John, I know at least they know that much.
Yes.
Just a little thing, you sort of getting a feel for where these people are, in as far as knowing anything's concerned. And I say, something may appeal to you. There may be one card that pops out and you really feel that that's the card for you. You might not know why. It might be the color, it might be the story, it might be a word, it might even be a number. Sometimes people pick them because it's a lucky number. But it doesn't matter. So if there's one, we'll start with that one. If not, we'll just start and go along and talk about them. So imagine that the person has picked, they're upside down, I can't see them, has picked, okay, where we are, oh, it's wobbling. Oh, that's because I've got a background on, isn't it?
That's all right.
That one. And I would just say, it's about Jesus talking to the crowds. It's a card about teaching and about how to live a good life, or something, some ever such a short couple of sentences. I wouldn't say, oh, now Jesus is on the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, blah, 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 blah. I wouldn't do all that. What I would do is just pick a couple of sentences. So what's a handy thing to do before, while you're getting ready to do this, is to sit with the cards yourself and go through and think, if I had to say just one or two sentences that would get the person's conversation started, what would it be for each of those cards?
Penny, that makes it sound as though you picked the cards ahead of time. Did you?
No, I
No.
just,
Okay. Right.
I shuffle and pray. It's the only time you shuffle cards and pray.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, some people let people pick them themselves. It doesn't really matter, so long as you end up with some cards
Yeah.
there for them to look at. And then I say, take as long as you like. Don't rush. Take as long as you like. And when the card comes up, we start a conversation. And basically from there on, there isn't a formula or a pattern or anything. It's a conversation, and you just go where the conversation goes.
Mm.
And it's about having a kind of discernment. So you're doing a kind of triple listening thing. So together, the two of you are listening to scripture on the card. You're listening to the person's life story as it starts to unfold. And you're also listening to God as he kind of prompts you with what you need to be saying in particular circumstances, which sometimes to me have been, you really want me to say that? But it's always been the right thing to say. So there isn't a formula after that. It's just a conversation, but it's a shared conversation because you're both looking at something together.
Yeah.
So it takes away from a kind of alteration in height of where people are. You're not the superior person who knows, dealing with the person who has no knowledge. It's a shared experience, which is what makes it so very moving. And I found that within a minute of meeting this stranger, they're opening up to you and saying, well, I've never told anybody this before, but this and that and the other. And you suddenly find yourself in a place where you're not quite sure. A box of tissues is required for this, I must say.
Yeah.
Sometimes for me, not for the client. Yeah, so yeah, that's how, and then the conversation just goes on naturally. The only difficulty is if you are dealing with someone with mental health problems. And what we tend to do at a big exhibition is to have somebody in the team who is available for you to sort of gently shut those people to them to deal with, because often people can't cope with the cards. And someone who's severely autistic or something like that, it just doesn't work. But those are few and far between. In the hundreds of people that I've talked to, I should think there's probably 3 or 4 people that I've really found to struggle with over that time. So it usually opens up. So it opens up into a conversation which can last 10 minutes, 12 minutes, whatever is natural. And then as it comes to a close, what I will do is I will say, it's been really nice talking to you and sharing with you. Maybe there might be some follow-up. It depends what sort of an exhibition or place it is, depending on what all that. But I will always say, please can I pray for you? And people often think I'm going to go off into some dark corner somewhere and pray for them, but I actually pray for them there and then. And what I then do is I take the little card that I showed you before on the screen, and I will use it as a bookmark, and I'll have a little pile of Matthew, Mark, Luke and John books, which I have left in the loft, so I can't show you, but I've put Jesus deck covers on them.
Nice.
And I will pick the one that had their particular verse in it, mark the verse with the bookmark, and give it to them as a gift. and say, this is a gift from us. This is your particular thing. Very
Mhm.
often at the end nowadays, people want to take a photograph on their phone of the cards that have been laid out for them. And that's another way of them taking
Yeah.
it away with them. But that's basically what I do. I hope that makes some sense.
Oh, absolutely. That's
And
brilliant.
answers one or two of the questions on the way.
Yes, that's right. But it's helpful to hear it as a continuous narrative and see how the thing holds together.
Yeah, yeah. So where are we with questions? Um, yeah, you first question was about what the four gospels are. Generally, when I'm laying the cards out, that's when I will say the story of Jesus was written by four people: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And I always talk about them as just as the writers of the story. I don't use the word gospel because it's so confusing, because it means so many different things in so many different contexts, and
Yeah.
it's not necessary. I just talk about them as writers. So that's what I do. And the little sort of snippet for each card, I kind of almost make up as I go along.
Right.
But I've got a bit of an idea of what I'm
Sure.
going to
So,
say.
Penny, can I just check when you put out, let us say, 5 cards, and I like the idea of 5, and that's what we've done in our practicing. Do you say something about each one before the person chooses?
No, I don't say anything before the person chooses
Okay.
at all. I just leave them on the table and give them absolutely as long as they like to look at them. I don't say anything apart from I've said Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That's the
Yeah,
right
yeah. Yes.
to explain what that is about. I let them take their time and choose. And then when they've chosen perhaps one card, I might say we'll start there, and then I might push the others to one side. But I'll say we aren't necessarily leaving those alone. We may come back to them, because sometimes as the conversation goes on, you realize that one of the other cards would be really helpful to bring in. So
Yes.
we'll bring in another card. And another thing that people sometimes say is not that one. And
Wow.
then
Yeah.
I keep my eye very carefully on that card, because there's something
Mm.
going on there that needs,
Oh,
to be thought about, I think, really. Yeah, so it's a kind of discernment thing. It's a
yeah.
kind of having your antenna out,
Yeah.
to try and tell what's going on with the person. Um, you didn't ask about the jokers, but I think I put it in the book.
Yeah, I
Um,
think you did. But do say something anyway.
I will say, because I used to take the jokers out of the pack because I didn't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
And Steve Hollinghurst said to me, because Steve and I are good friends, he said to me, "Why do you take the jokers out of the pack?" I said, "Well, because I don't know what to do with them." And he said, "Well, I've found that if you get a joker dealt out, it's a sort of sign of somebody who is, there's something going on, and very often it's something quite, it can be quite as a spiritual battle or something like that. So leave the jokers in and see what happens." So I started to leave the jokers in, and when I get the joker, I'll just say, "Oh, the joker. That's a sign of somebody a bit out of the box." This is my phrase that I
Mm.
use. And the person will sometimes say, "Oh, well, that's me. I am a bit out of the box." So you've already got a bit of information. Or they'll say, "Oh, I know who that is. I know somebody who's like
Wow.
that," or
Wow.
whatever. But I always am a bit wary. I was somewhere, and this lady came to me. I was already a little bit, oh, what's this about? And I dealt the cards, and she got two jokers.
Wow.
And I said to her, "Who are you?"
Yeah.
And she said, "I'm the local spiritist minister."
And what
So,
happened next?
well, we had a bit of a conversation, but we agreed to part. We did
Funny.
have a bit of a conversation, but it wasn't going to
Yeah,
go.
funny.
many places, but it was interesting that I've never had two jokers before, and that was so. So I'm a bit sort of, the cards speak. And you asked about leaving the Judas card out as well.
Yeah,
I think John Drain said he had, was it 9 times it came up in one day or something.
really.
Yeah, I've had it come up frequently. If we get a card that comes up very frequently, we will often say it's possibly a card for us, not necessarily for the client. Or
Uh,
so there's some message there for us. But the Judas card needn't be a problem, because it depends what you say as you put it down. You just say, oh, this is a card of great sadness, of betrayal, and of disappointment, is what I usually say, of betrayal and disappointment.
mm,
And if anybody looks like they're even going to say, oh, does it mean I'm going to commit suicide? No, it doesn't. The cards are not like that. They're not telling your fortune. They're giving you parts of the story of Jesus and how he dealt with people and how he was with people. So kind of, I've never had a real problem with it. So that was something you did ask, wasn't it?
yes. Oh, Cynthia's got her hand up.
Sorry, I wanted to go back to the Joker, and this is more of a personal reason because actually, when we practiced, I did get the Joker, and I'm getting the sense that this is, I could be wrong, negative or something. Like, I don't view it as negative, but I'm not sure.
No, it's not negative. It's simply a kind of indication to be aware that the person with you has something special about them
Hmm.
that you need to notice. I think that's what it is. I've noticed it with people, that you maybe need to be doubly aware of something about the person. Perhaps there's going to be some revelation or something that might be difficult or different. And I think that's more what it is. It's not a negative. I don't think it's a negative thing at all. Because if you notice, the Joker has got the lovely thing about being
Yeah.
fooled for Christ, which is what
Yes.
exactly we go to be. Yeah, yeah. So is that clearer?
It is clearer. It helps me understand partly why I did get the card more. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I think if anybody did it for me, they'd probably get the Joker. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So, where to now? Um,
Um,
yeah,
so,
you were saying.
so they've chosen a card.
Mhm.
Now, do you wait for them to say what it means to them before you tell them what Jesus, it meant in the gospel?
I kind of try to tease something out of them. I say that's interesting. There's a particular reason why you've chosen that, or you don't have to have a reason for choosing it, because sometimes people say, I don't know why I picked that one. It just seemed as I wanted to pick that one, which is a really good place to start. Or they might start. I mean, there's the lady. I don't know whether this is in the book, but there's a lady who picked the card of Jesus and the children. And I
Yeah.
said, why have you picked this one? And she said, oh, I'm a teacher. I'm interested in education, and I'm interested in children's welfare and everything like that. And we talked a little while about that, and moral education, and you bring all sorts of things that come in. And then I heard God say to me, ask her which child this is really about.
Mm.
And I thought, oh, this asked me to say some very strange things sometimes. I said, you're obviously very fond of children, but I said, is there a particular child you
Wow.
had in mind when you picked this one? And she said, yes, I've just had a miscarriage.
Oh,
Told you need the tissues for me as well. Yeah.
oh, we
Then,
need them now.
then of course the conversation got very much deeper, um,
Yes.
into pain and where was God in all this and that kind of thing. So
Okay.
yeah, it opened up. Yeah. So yes.
Good for
So
you.
that's just looking at your questions.
So you actually, there's one I didn't write down, but it comes to mind as you're talking. When I put them out, my instinct is to put them in chronological order. But I think you're saying that's really not relevant. It's not necessary.
It's not necessary, no.
No. Okay.
And moving them about once you've put them down.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Confuse people probably. I mean, if there is some reason for them to go in order, but if you're working from the one that the person picks first,
Yes.
I mean, actually, if you think about it, to go through 5 cards completely would take quite a long time. It did when I did the 5 card with the couple, and it was more about telling the story than anything else. But because doing the cards with more than one person is a different feel, has a different feel to it,
Yes.
because you don't get that quite that intimate, and they're possibly not going to reveal things, even if it's a close partner, that they might do when
Right.
you're on your own. The largest number of people I ever did, and please don't try this one, was 8. And they went from a grandfather to a tiny little toddler
Oh.
grandchild,
Oh.
and they all wanted to come at once.
Oh.
And it was wonderful. But I don't know where it went really. But no, mostly it works best as a one-to-one. If a child comes up to me at an exhibition or anything, I ask them to go back and fetch the parent.
Yeah.
I don't do it with children on their own.
No.
I will ask for a parent to be present.
Yeah.
Mm.
The question that I think I raised, because I wrote down all of our questions, Margaret gave me cards was it last Sunday or the Sunday before? And I really could not find any that I want to say worked for me. And does that happen? And if so, do you steal another set of cards? What would you
No,
do?
no. All I do, as I say, if in my initial sort of introduction, I'll say one card might pop out for you as being really, really important, or maybe a couple. But if none of them do, we'll just start from, and I'll just start from the end and say, we'll just start here. And I'll say, this is a card about very
Yeah.
briefly. And does that chime in with anything in your life? But
Right.
it's quite unusual. People mostly will pick one, mostly, even if I think they're possibly just picking because they to please me, as it were. But mostly people are picking because something really does pop out at them. Really is important to them.
Right. No, that's a good way around it. Just to say, for you to say something about each of the cards and see if maybe that
Yeah,
triggers something when they're seeing
yeah,
something, hearing
yeah.
something other than just the card.
I do it one at a time. I wouldn't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is about this. This is about this. But
No.
it's too much for people to take in. So yeah, just start with one. Whatever's on the end is usually where I start.
Yeah.
And I say the only people I've really struggled with are people with either mental health problems or people who are mainly people who are autistic. It's not something that they can cope with very well because it's got that level of abstraction and complication that really is outside usually of them coping.
Yeah.
I know this because my son works with people on the Asperger's spectrum, so
Yeah.
So you asked about follow-up.
Yeah. Go on.
Or
Yes.
just going down the list. I think it depends very much on where you are and what you're doing. I mean, I've done a lot of big exhibitions, particularly in the south of England when I was working down there, where there would be people from a couple of 100 miles away, a mix of people. So it wouldn't be entirely about any follow-up. You just sort of say to people, well, if you want to follow this up, if you want, I will give details sometimes and say you can keep in touch with me, but people mostly don't necessarily want that. I'm a great one believer in God doing the follow-up, you know,
Yeah.
and sort of leaving it to, and being a link in a chain. But what we have done sometimes is when we've done a local exhibition, we followed it up with quite often with a storytelling session in a pub.
Wow.
Works quite well. Or with an offer of a course. And the one, I can't remember what it's called, and I should do to remember what it's called. There is a wonderful thing that is specifically for people who are of alternative spirituality and for whom something like Alpha or even Start or whatever as a course wouldn't be suitable, and it's just completely gone out of my head. I'll pop it in an email to you and tell
Yeah,
you.
if you would, thank you.
It's a course that was particularly put together with this kind of client in mind, really. So you offer something like that, or just offer some social event. If you're doing it as a local church, you know, you've obviously got all the advantages.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it is often local people who come. The street, Lock Street, is a popular street, lots of coffee shops and trendy stores, and 4 churches, as it happens. So it's often local people or people from other parts of the city, and it will be right outside the church building, and there may be some events actually happening in the building. So
Yeah, I was
hopefully
going to
there will
say you
be.
may have people. One of the things that we always do is we will sort of collar a local church when we're at a big exhibition and have a prayer team there. So we always have a prayer backup team. I've seen your question, Margaret. I'll come to it in 2 ticks. Uh, so we would always have people there, you know, to sort of be backing us up, and sometimes I think we've sometimes sent people along to them to have further conversation, especially if we're very busy. We did
Sure.
one small exhibition in Harwich, just in Essex, and of the people who came to the exhibition, 75% of them came to our stall.
Wow.
So we had a queue a mile long, and I had to fetch extra team members in just to manage the queue and to make sure that we didn't block other stalls and we didn't make a nuisance of ourselves, that we kept people going while they waited to come. So there's all that sort of thing.
So in that context, Penny, how many readers would you have working at the same time?
Well, usually, if you have the standard size gazebo, which is what we work with indoors and outdoors,
Yeah.
or a standard size space at an exhibition, which is pretty well the same size, you can comfortably get 2 small tables and 4 chairs in there with enough space for privacy.
Yeah.
So I would always have 2 people at a time. But if you're doing a full day, which we often would do from 10 till 5, we would have a big team so that you could have a break.
Yeah.
Some people need a break more often than others. I always have somebody in the team whose specific job is to come and poke me in the ribs and say, get up, walk about and have something to eat. Because otherwise I will sit there from 10 till 5 without moving, because I just love doing it so much. But yeah, you need, if you're going to do it for a length of time, you need at least, you know, a relief person to come in and take turns. Because it's draining spiritually, it's draining mentally, and it can be draining physically as well to sit for quite a long time doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, usually I get up from the table, I find my legs are not working anymore. You know, I've just gone completely dead in the legs. You're asking about the storytelling in the pub, Margaret.
Yes, and if you wouldn't, and if you wouldn't mind, also, I'm just interested that you would have 2 tables in your gazebo. That doesn't sound very private to me. How does that work?
It's possible to get them just about far enough apart. Because you're not raising your voice and they're not raising their voice. It's quite an intimate conversation across a table. It's also, you want to be private, but you don't want to be isolated for either for their sake or for yours, just in case of anything happening.
Yes.
So it does work. In fact, I can show you some pictures. Let me go back to sharing screen and show you some pictures of us doing this. Right. I don't know what that's doing there.
These things have minds of their own.
I do indeed. It's not going to move on, is it? Oh yeah, it is going to move on. There we are. There's
Oh yeah.
there's two tables in quite a small space. There again, some more. That one that if you can see I'm pointing, is actually on the harbour side here. We're a small port in Northumberland, and this is us on the side of the harbour, just in a gazebo on the side of the harbour. This you can see is in an exhibition space. Is that? Go back. Previous. I think that's no. Doesn't want to play. Yeah, that's those must be the pictures that I've got. I'll stop sharing. So you can see that it does work. And one of the things, I mean, I'm art trained, so I was an artist craftsman, and so colour is very important to me, and we theme ourselves on this sort of purples and lilacs colour, to the extent that team members will often dress in those colours, to try and make it look. If we're in an exhibition with other people, a lot of which is commercial, in body, mind and soul exhibitions, we need to look professional. We don't need to look like a church back of the wallpaper stuff, you know.
Right.
You know what I mean?
We know.
And we did at first, and we did. I admit we did. But once we got onto this, we've been told we look more professional than the professionals. But I think appearances are important. It shows that you've got a kind of, what you're doing is important enough for you to have taken the trouble to make sure that it looks good. Yeah.
Tell us about pub storytelling.
Yeah, pub storytelling. Yeah, we just hired a small room in a pub, and invited people along, and we just told stories, some of which were just stories. I'm a storyteller. That's one of the things that I do. We had one or two other people. Some people read poems of theirs and various things like that, and then kind of moved towards stories that had a faith-based thing, and then just discussed them between it, and just a very, very informal sort of thing. I haven't done it for a long time. I would love to do it because I am a storyteller, and I have got a fund of different kinds of stories that for different situations. But it works. It works as anything that brings people together, has possibly got food and drink involved, and an opportunity to talk. You can't beat it, can you, really?
No, it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Margaret, anything more? I think we've done most of the questions on the list, and a lot more too.
One of them, Penny, I catastrophize and fear judgment. So my question was, what's the worst thing that could happen, or what's the biggest mistake that people typically make, and what's the most obvious pitfall to think about?
That's a good question. I think the thing I don't look forward to is getting somebody who just doesn't respond. Like, and generally it's people who have got that kind of shall we say neural difference or whatever, and that makes it quite hard. The other thing that is difficult coming from the side of the person doing the reading, I trained a big team up for a big exhibition, including a Baptist minister, and this is not against Baptist ministers. Also, my friends are Baptist ministers, but it just to illustrate why the man had a problem. And what I would do with a new team member who is doing his first reading with a member of the public is I wouldn't go near enough to listen, but I watch body language. And I watched his body language, and what he was doing was using the card to preach, because he was this is this. So just take him gently on one side and say, perhaps, you know, there's a better way.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah, that's the pitfall. Especially if you are, you know, a minister, if you are used to preaching, you see a text and you know, you want to get going on it, but you've got to be much more gentle. It's about being gentle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Penny, I think the most helpful thing among many of them is, in my mind, only having done it with Margaret and Cynthia, I was thinking, well, if the person says this, what do I say then? And do I say this before they say that or after they say that? And I mean, the best word you have used is the word conversation. Obviously, right? I mean,
conversation. It's just
yeah, you're going with the flow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a conversation where you're doing this triple listening. So you're listening to the scripture on the card, you're listening to their life story as it unfolds, and you're listening to God's promptings for where the conversation goes next.
Yeah, it's lovely.
I've been blown away time after time after time by people who've said to me, I've never told anybody this before, but this, or I have this experience, but I didn't dare share it with anybody else, or particularly people who've had experiences of spiritual things, you know, seeing things, hearing things, and they don't want to be laughed at. People who want to share with you their faith journey, which may be very, very different to yours. I mean, I've had a Reiki healer to do the cards with. In fact, a lot of the tarot readers at the exhibitions, when we used to do the really big exhibitions here, well, down there down south, the tarot readers would come to us first before opening time to have the Jesus deck read before they did that. Yeah.
I don't think we're ready for a fair just yet.
Yeah, I think here the fairs seem to be not as big as they were, and we find here that Steve Hollinghurst does the big London one. It costs thousands of pounds just to take a stall and to take insurance out, because of course you've got to have insurance.
Yeah.
And you know, raising the money for that has been something that, well, rightly or wrongly, what we've done is, in selling the Jesus decks that we've got now, I hold the world stocks in my garage. And they're dwindling very, very rapidly. 12 years ago, we ran out, and we had this reprint done, which I think is a bit about it in the book. But we had the reprint done, and when it actually came on a forklift truck, so you can tell how big it was.
Wow.
And there were thousands of decks, and I thought, this will last me out my lifetime. I'm going to be, you know, I'm going to be leaving this in my will to somebody. We're now really down, and we haven't got the money for another reprint, simply because I used the money as it came in for people who wanted to do things that they couldn't afford to do, because it's so expensive. So we haven't got enough money to do a reprint. So if you happen to know some millionaire who would like to do a reprint, I'm very happy to talk to them.
I know some millionaires. I'm not sure they have the vision yet.
But yeah, so have you found it easy to get hold of Jesus Deck then?
I think well, the backstory is, we have been encouraging fresh expressions of church in Canada for almost 20 years. We've had a lot of the leaders, Steve Mayle, Dave Croft, Steve Croft. You would know a lot of the names. and so when I was going over there, that's how I met George Lings. I'd heard the name, tracked him down, sat him down, talked to him. I think it was in the Diocese of Guildford, or is that called the Diocese of Surrey? I forget.
Oh,
But I think
Diocese of
it was
Guildford.
someone in that diocese that they put me onto this. And someone actually took me out for coffee and did a reading for me. I'm going to start using that phrase. And that's where
Yeah.
it began. I thought,
Mm.
this is great. I think I bought 3 or 4 copies. That was probably of the original set.
If you bought them in the UK, not
Yeah.
online, it was the reprint.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because the original set now,
Yeah.
I mean, this is the reason of having the reprint. I've got an original set in the black box, little black box. It's now worth £525.
Leave it. Leave it.
So, and I paid £19 for it, and that was why we knew that they were running out. So that's why we had the reprint done. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when people from out of the UK ask me about getting hold of them, I put them onto a guy in York who I supply. I do the wholesale. He does the retail because I can't be running to the post
No,
office
no, it's too
every day.
much. Yeah.
It's too
Yeah.
much. So that's the way of getting. If you want any more, you get onto him. It's called Mission Magic in York.
Oh, Mission Magic.
Yeah. So if you want any more copies, he's the best because I
Right.
don't do retail.
We have 3 that will last us for a little while.
Yes, yeah, but treasure them because they will become
Yeah,
difficult to
rarities.
get. I mean, I've got about 4 or 5 boxes left in the garage.
Penny, we're very grateful for your time.
I've really enjoyed meeting you.
Oh, good. Unless Margaret has any questions, I would be happy to leave it there for now.
Mhm.
I forget, Margaret, do you remember the date we're doing this Sunday thing?
It's in August. I'm not sure when it is.
Yeah. So Penny, I will send you a note when it's going to happen. Obviously,
Yeah.
we'd be grateful for you to pray during that time.
That would
And
be.
and my guess is that if you were open, it would be good to do a follow-up conversation.
I'd love to do that. I'd love
This
to hear
happened.
how
What
it
do we do
goes.
about that? Yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be really good. And I'd love to know how it goes and particularly to pray for you and everything. Do you want the Dropbox details?
Yes, if you would. Thank
Uh,
you.
I'll send those to you ere long. I'm on my way
Okay.
to a party now.
Are you? It's easy. Nice for you. All right. Well, if you would pray for us before you go, that would be wonderful.
Dear Lord, I just thank you for the means of being able to have this conversation, but the wonders of technology when it works. And Lord, I thank you that these good people want to share the good news of Jesus with those around them. I pray that they will be strengthened, they'll be encouraged, that will be emboldened to use the Jesus deck as a means of talking to people about you, that they will be able to know your blessing, know your presence, hear your voice as they share with other people. Lord, I just pray that this will be a real time of blessing, of renewal, of revival for the people of the town. And Lord, I pray especially for your protection over them as they do this, for your protection of their health, their well-being, and their spiritual well-being, that you'll be close to them, that they will know your presence. And I ask this in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Annie, thank you again. It's
Lovely
lovely.
meeting you. Lovely.
Have a great
So,
party.
remember to stop the recording and
Oh,
then
yes.
send us the link when you get it. I think
I
they'll
will
email
do.
it.
Yes, I better, yes. No, I don't know how to stop the recording, but
It'll just go on in for infinity.
there we are. I've got it.